Hey everyone. I just want to start off by saying this is probably the most optimistic and enthusiastic that I have been about decentralized science. I first attended a DeSci Berlin in 2022, and I think that just the macro trends of optimism in crypto and adoption, plus the incredible progress within artificial intelligence, and finally the incredible talent that we see converging on this space means we are really approaching the precipice of something very special. And I'm really excited to be joined by my brilliant panelists today. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Gunjan Paul and I'm from ValleyDAO. I'm the core member who is developing the flow
receiver to avoid losing it.
Love to share about flow in these days. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Martin. You just heard from me. I'm from the coordination network, so I'll leave it at that.
Hi, I'm Mark. I'm from CerebrumDAO, developing solutions for neurotechnology with Web3 and crypto.
And my name is Aakaash. I was previously a co-founder at LabDAO. I've worked in big pharma, and I just joined the bio-AI team. I'll start this off with Mark. I'd love to hear, where are bio-DAOs really thinking that AI is going to have the most progress, both like today and perhaps maybe 3 to 6 months from now?
Yeah, good question. I think especially like the roadmap of AI is really important to put into perspective when we have all these ideas and optimism. I first break it down to like what are the most basic things that we can do right now to accelerate. So for example, developing endpoints for trials that we want to run. When, like one example, we're developing a clinical trial, we needed a blood biomarker. First we were looking at amyloid, then eventually we came to a p-tau 217, partially just by using OpenAI deep research. So just accelerating what we want to do, characterizing it in studies, endpoints, and just like kicking off that whole process is really accelerating. And for the future, what I'd love to do is have the data that we get from studies, like, because that's really the core of a bio-DAO. Like, if everyone can access ChatGPT, what's the most unique thing you have? It's the data you're creating from laboratories in Zurich or from studies that are being run. We've heard a lot about these being kicked off. And how are those going to modify your knowledge graph to create those new unique hypotheses that you can then execute on because you're basically the first to get that knowledge?
So it sounds kind of like the existing AI tools, for example, OpenAI Deep Research, are really kind of fueling the progress within the bio-DAOs right now, but there's a lot of optimism about where these tools are going. Gunjan, I know you've been working on this at ValleyDAO. Can you share a little bit about how you guys are thinking about this?
Yeah, so for us, we use like a lot of models, different models from OpenAI, different models from Perplexity. We use deep research from Perplexity. And what we noticed, they have different capabilities for different type of tasks. And in terms of any kind of knowledge finding from existing data, we use the knowledge graph. And the knowledge graph is helping us in a better way. Like we always get a lot of deep research, but we can't directly find a direct connection between different kind of work done previously. But using the knowledge graph, we are able to find it in a better way to connect different dots. Okay, this research done in this way and this research done in this way. We can connect both and can do something very different or something very exciting in that same space.
Yeah, I think everyone here has heard the term knowledge graphs a ton. I'd love, Jacek, if you could maybe speak to the project that Martin teased in his presentation, HypeGen, and how you guys are thinking about using knowledge graphs for generating novel hypotheses.
Right. So, like in general, they are known, or like there are two ways of looking for new discoveries in science. And one is what is referred to as a literature base, that it basically grounds the new hypothesis based on the facts that are already described and talked about in literature. And the second one is what is being called data-driven approach. And this one specifically looks more into the data, so empirical results, and start to looking for correlations and insights within the data itself. But what I think is actually the most promising, and I think this is what Mark was also saying, is combining of these two worlds. So basically looking at what is in the data, looking for these correlations, for new insights, because this is really the source of new knowledge. And then grounding this in literature. So specifically what we are doing right now, we are focusing solely on the literature-based approach. So we are mining scientific papers, we are turning them into knowledge graphs. And then within these knowledge graphs, we actually let the agents have these walks, so explore these knowledge graphs. And there's multiple ways to do it. One of the ways we are right now investigating is the interest-based approach. So we are trying to mimic with agents the way how scientists are also exploring science. So basically looking for interesting or surprising connections. So you can imagine an agent just that goes from node to a node. And at every single node, he sees its past history of the nodes he traveled, and also all the neighbors in the neighborhood of the current node. And he asks himself the question, what is the most interesting node I can go to in order to optimize for finding a novel, surprising connection that can later on be turned into a hypothesis. So these agents traverse through this knowledge graph, and this is the way we extract subgraphs. With these subgraphs, we then have another agent that basically tries to score how relevant it is, how novel it is, and how actually how of a potential it has for hypotheses. Once it passes test, it goes to a hypothesis generator that basically expands the context. It iteratively adds new sources, uses deep research, then it uses bioinformatics tools to provide more empirical data. And based on this extended context, it creates hypotheses that it goes through multiple layers of validation. And once the process is done, it is being posted as a post on social media or on HypeGen, where we want researchers to be interactive with them. So I think the biggest problem with using AI for hypothesis generation is that it's just super cheap to create one, right? And they might not be really relevant, and we might be just overflooded with like gibberish, basically. So with HypeGen, we took a different approach because we want to bring as many interested bodies into the system, so everyone can create with us their own knowledge graph. And every knowledge graph can go through the same process of extracting the subgraphs and posting them on HypeGen in order to increase the agency. So if you have hypotheses that are relevant to your field, you're much more involved in this, and you're much more likely to actually process them, validate, and explore them. So this is what we are doing with HypeGen, and maybe Martin can also mention a few words.
Sure, yeah. I think what I always really love when Jacek talks about what they're doing, because I think he has a good way of kind of pedagogically walking through this complexity, because I think kind of tied to what you were saying, there's a lot of nuance as to what approach you're taking to generate the hypotheses. And so what's exciting with HypeGen, it's like packaging all of that up into a post that you then like or don't like. And I think this is what we're trying to then work towards. And another interesting anecdote related to that is I was speaking to Andrew, one of the co-founders of Future House, who was mentioned earlier, and he also brought up that in their testing of their agent frameworks, one of the issues they faced is that the hypothesis is like they lack taste. So these autonomously generated hypotheses, they're like kind of bland at times, or they don't like speak to the scientist. And so another element that we're trying to address by creating this social experience is that taste question, so that you can actually like very quickly give a sense of like beyond the thematic relevance, does it, excite you? And so speaking to Jacek's point on surprise, that's opened up a whole avenue of exploring like how do you incorporate this element of surprise and taste into the generation process. So I think that's maybe an element that I'd add, that it's the UI of how to then bring this to a broader audience can be just as much about those things as then kind of the scientific validity. And of course, you want both of those combined. So that's another element we're trying to have there to make this fun kind of gamified experience that then lets us both understand that this is high quality, but also that it's, engaging in a way.
I'm wondering on the the taste comment. Obviously, all of us have used ChatGPT, Claude, and whatnot. And one of my observations is that for things I have a high level of expertise in, it's not so helpful, but for new things, it can be quite helpful. And I'm wondering, maybe within the scientific literature, if you're trying to probe on a already well-trodden path, maybe these AIs do really need more refined taste. But if you think about, Ed Boyden presented yesterday, and he discussed this idea of how do we engineer serendipity? You know, optogenetics is a very interesting overlap between biology and physics. How can we maybe engineer these AI frameworks, these knowledge graphs in a way where we are actually engineering that serendipity? Mark, do you want to maybe take a stab at this?
I guess I'm thinking more usually on the practical applications. Like, what do you mean by serendipity? What would be the...
I guess, like, right now, a lot of the BioDAOs seem to be obviously focused on their particular therapeutic area or their particular field. Do we see a future where maybe CerebrumDAO is collaborating with MicrobiomeDAO, because obviously the gut-brain axis is a big thing. I guess how do we build both the social but also the technical foundations to facilitate that collaboration?
Yeah, so that goes really in the direction of the knowledge graphs can exchange and talk with one another. Like, I imagine every BioDAO having its own API so that they can be interacted with. For MicrobiomeDAO especially, like we've been talking about setting up a collaborative study. I wrote up a quick summary with ChatGPT deep research, you know, as to kick it off. But that's really where we want to go. We have the different DAOs creating unique information about their particular domain areas of expertise. Knowledge graphs are vetted by, for example, in Cerebrum, the translational neuroscience team. And then we can get unique hypotheses by connecting these DAOs together, which I think we wouldn't normally have. So that's like the long-term goal that I see for sure. And I think like one thing we haven't really talked about, like there's hypothesis generation, but what I find super useful is when we bring in the data science tools to the large language models, like you have with Julius AI. So if I run a quick POC study capturing EEG data, I can do a literature research. I can see what endpoint I'm probably looking for, like how the data should be changing with a different scenario. And then, you know, basically just do the basic data science, graphing, create basic ML models from that data. And this is where I think we could really have some opportunities to integrate the backends of R and Python into the agents so that you can then really run your data, get your results, and then that should then feed back into the knowledge graph. And then I think that's where we start to get serendipity, especially when there's connections between the different DAOs and their unique studies and the unique data coming out of them. And
Jacek, I know with HypeGen you were kind of describing the social media application. So right now, the hypothesis generation, as I understand, is pretty autonomous, but we still introduce, you guys still introduce the human in the loop with regards to like upvoting or downvoting these hypotheses. Are humans still here to stay, or are agents going to take over in 6 to 12 months?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I think, so recently I was at the medical conference and they were showing results of one study. Basically, the performance on diagnostic task that was performed by 3 groups. One group was just medical doctors. The second group was medical doctors that use ChatGPT or some other Gen AI tool. And the third group was just generative AI tool that was just given the picture and the description and was supposed to give a prediction. And surprisingly to me, the worst performing group was doctors that use ChatGPT. And the best performing group was the ChatGPT itself. Like, it made me think, like, how come it is? I mean, doctors, they spend years on studying and having so much experience as well in the field. And I would imagine that combining these two forces, it can really accelerate and make the performance much better. But I think the problem is that the doctors are not really taught how to use them. So they rely on generic answers from Gen AI tools like ChatGPT, and they are generic. They are made for average. There's basically an average of all of our responses throughout the training process. So I would like to see the future where actually the symbiosis is so the group that combines both doctors and Gen AI tools is the best performing one, because I think we still need a human touch. So going back to your previous question, I think like what I've been finding in the subgraphs that we've been generating is that they do lack taste. Indeed, like just coming back to what Martin said, referring to the conversation. And I think it's because they lack curiosity as we have as humans. And I think this is one of the hardest things to mimic or to train for, because LLMs specifically, they train on tokens, on words, without any real connection to the real world. And when you observe a kid who's just learning everything, you go for a walk with your son or daughter, and he or she just stops all the time because they can interact with this world. They can touch it, they can look at it. And I mean, this itself just drives the curiosity. So I think how we can engineer this curiosity in AI is exactly by combining them with humans. So like we have a new pilot project that we expose knowledge graph in form of a more playful experience where everyone can interact and everyone can just start navigating. So it's more of a game, but you can also chat with the knowledge graph. So basically you can ask all the questions about the nodes and how they're related. And what is interesting, that we can also mine these patterns of how people are traversing through the graph. And I think this is a great source of embedding curiosity in the graph as well, by just looking at how people are interacting with it. Specifically also HypeGen, because it allows for researchers to grade not only hypotheses, but also subgraphs that were the base for these hypotheses to be generated. This provides a reward system that we can later on use to train our agents in reinforcement learning, basically by giving them rewards of which subgraph was actually interesting for humans. So I think there's so much for us to give also to AI, but I think I would like to see this as a more of symbiosis parts. I mean, AI is great at analyzing data really fast, have like PhD level scientists in your pocket. But I think some parts of human nature is irreplaceable, and I see the future where we coexist together.
Let's hope. I think the idea of taste is super interesting, and seeing where humans are traversing the graph as sort of a signal for that is fascinating. In DeSci, we're quite diverse in our ethnicities, educations, professions. Gunjan, I know ValleyDAO has been working pretty actively on internal AI initiatives. I'm wondering, how are you guys thinking about the variety of users that your community has? Are the products that you build inherently different based off of these various user archetypes within your community?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, definitely. We are right now only focusing on climate biotech and those who are using synthetic biology for building different kind of products. But at some point in DeSci London, I think we faced an issue that people with different focus and different fields, they are very interested to use our product and build their technology development and business development. At that point, we had to generalize every prompt to make it more broader focus, not only climate and synthetic biology. So yeah, the prompt we developed is helping more people, more users in different fields. Yeah, this is how we are tackling this issue right now. But with the time, I think we are building a centralized knowledge graph, and I think it will help other people in future, like because the knowledge graph is not for one project or one user, it's for all the user we have on our platform flow. So yeah, this is how we are tackling. And yeah, I want to add one more thing that you mentioned, the curiosity. Yeah, that's very important. Actually, I had my bachelor thesis on how to integrate curiosity on robot in reinforcement learning to minimize the path for the drone. So this is what I can see is missing in current LLM models. They're not very curious. You are just giving your answer and like, okay, this is the response you have. But some prompt technique are there which making it work like a PPO model. Proximal policy optimization is like it starts fighting with each other. So this is one very interesting topic to explore in LLM.
Cool, and I know we're nearly out of time right now, but Martin, just maybe you can close us with, what is it about DeSci that makes us different? You spoke a bit about the incentive mechanisms of creating these graphs kind of in the open, like Gunjan's saying. Could you just give us some closing thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think like what is the reason we've been able to do what we've been able to do is because of the openness, the willingness to share across these communities. And I think to the curiosity point, to the cross-pollination, that's, I think, something that is such a huge opportunity, that the principles of openness, basically, of this community is what allows it to be like a competitive advantage over more closed ecosystems. And so, you know, in pursuit of this, what's fun is, you know, as you can see, there's multiple different initiatives moving towards trying to address this from multiple different perspectives, and there's an openness to discuss and collaborate. And so I think that's what will really that's what creates this opportunity now to make progress very quickly and to start uncovering where there are these cross-pollination opportunities. So I think with that being the next thing that needs to be addressed, this community has the ingredients and the expertise across different domains and the willingness to collaborate to make that happen very quickly. So, and then on top of that, having programmatic and open incentive systems to help both on the immutable attribution side and then also on the reward side is part of what brings that entire system together in a viable and flourishing ecosystem as well.
I just realized we have 5 minutes left, so maybe we have a bit more time. And Jacek, I just realized cross-pollination BeeARD. That's why you guys are called BeeARD, right? That's quite clever. Maybe just to double-click a little bit on this, let's say in the analogy where you have two BioDAOs working together, how do you engineer the system so that the flowers smell good for both BioDAOs?
Right. So actually, I think, so this is something we discussed before here. I think the most interesting things that we can discover in knowledge graph is on the edges. So where different BioDAOs are meeting with their own expertise, because these are really not well discovered. So before starting BeeARDai, I was focusing on machine learning research, and I had a pretty small niche of knowledge representation within language models. But I was not really going out beyond this because there was just so many papers every day that I had to go through if I really want to stay just updated with my own field. So I think like this is pretty universal for a lot of fields. So that's why I think like the most interesting parts are really on the edges. So what we want to do with Hypogen is basically, this is a call actually to everyone. So if you're running a lab, if you're in BioDAO, if you're just independent researcher and you're working on something, you have your own niche, and you have like 100 papers that is actually fundamental for your research. Just come to us. We'll build a knowledge graph for you. We'll expand on this, and we'll add it to our larger knowledge graph. So then we can actually start combining these different research fields. And then having this analogy of agents traversing through a knowledge graph. We can basically specify where he should start in a specific domain, so for example in longevity, and ask him to go somewhere in psychedelics, you know? And this is the path he can go. He can cross the borders between different domains. And I think this is really what is going to really drive us forward and bring us new novel connections that are there but are not discovered yet. So I would say this would be probably the most interesting path forward.
I guess we should change it from let's get cooking to let's get buzzing as a community. I think we're out of time right now, so thank you all for joining, and hope you guys enjoyed this.